do we do?
Yes,
On,
please. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to this first issue of what is really going to be a series of video interviews in which we attempt to critically look at the performance of the African Tax Administration Forum, ATAF, during the year 2022. ATAF has just released its annual report for the year 2022, and in this particular issue, we will zoom into the work of the organizations in the areas of international tax, including the Pillar 1, Pillar 2 discussions, and technical assistance. My name is Romeo Nkulu Ella. I'm your humble host in this program, and with me, I have ATAF's Manager, Country Programs and Rapid Response, Mrs. Samira Khan, and Mr. Tulani Shongwe, who is the Manager, International Tax at ATAF. Welcome to you, Samira and Tulani. It's great to have you with us. For those who are joining us online, please note that this program is being live broadcast on ATAF's YouTube page. Please feel free to post your comments and questions in the comment sections on the page, and we'll do our best to answer them in the time allocated to these programs. Now, let's jump right in. Samira and Tulani, 2022 was special in the sense that it was a first year post-COVID-19 for ATAF, as was the case for many other organizations, to really return to normality. How has this affected your performance as an organization? Maybe I'll turn to you first, Samira.
Thank you very much, Romeo, and good afternoon to the listeners or the viewers of this podcast. Yes, 2022 was an interesting year. It was a return in partial to the office mid-year through the mid-year. And so, as you know, the Country Programs Unit primary role is to provide technical assistance and to be able to flexibly respond to members' countries' technical assistance requests, whether it's related to domestic taxes or international tax issues to improve domestic resource mobilization. And that being said, and to ensure the effective mobilization of domestic resources in member countries, there was a great need for continuous improvement in our strategy, systems, processes, and legislation. And to this effect, ATAF has regularly provided tailored and long-term technical assistance, as well as short-term technical assistance and rapid response assistance to its members. In 2022, ATAF's outreach to member countries grew significantly, and the return to normality saw an exponential growth or increase in technical assistance requests, especially for in-country technical assistance missions. ATAF was able to exceed its performance targets in the delivery of technical assistance by adopting a hybrid format of delivery, where we provided some in-country technical assistance missions as well as quite a few virtual ones. This way, we were able to spread our delivery of technical assistance as well as increase the number of technical assistance missions that were delivered. And so in 2022, 113 cross-border technical assistance missions were delivered, whilst these are long-term transfer pricing programs, whilst we had about 77 short-term technical assistance missions that were conducted across various areas in domestic and tax administration issues in about 27 of our member countries, which also included about 8 Francophone and Lusophone countries in there as well. To date, 369 audit cases have been completed and 599 cases opened since 2016, and around 1.3 billion has been already collected from transfer pricing up to 2022, and currently it is actually sitting at $1.5 billion. 45 million was also collected through technical assistance interventions just in the area of domestic tax alone, and around $79 million in transfer pricing revenue was collected through transfer pricing technical assistance was collected in 2022 alone. So I'll stop there now and I'll hand back to you in terms of our achievements for this year, for 2022 actually.
Thank you, Samira. That sounds actually very impressive. And I'll come back to some of the figures that you've stated here. You mentioned I think it was over $41 million in domestic tax collections only. But we'll come back to that. Let me turn to Thulani. Do you feel that, especially in the area of international tax, that your performance has also been positively affected by the lessons learned from the COVID-19 era?
Thank you, Romeo, and also good morning and good afternoon to all the viewers out there. Yes, certainly. I think if we look at the international tax landscape, a number of things have taken place. Primarily, we're dealing with the changes in global tax debate and how you actually tax the traditional forms of business. At the same time, during COVID, what we saw was a rise in digital and online sales. And so this brought in the question of what we call nexus, the issue about how do you tax the physical presence of a business when we're noting that a number of these companies are no longer physical. They are either cloud services, they perform in the gig economy. And so that raised the global issues debate around taxation of the digitalized economy. And I think this was somewhat exacerbated by COVID. Yes, on one hand, there has been a reduction in business. So if you look at traditional outlets, say your mom and pop stores in local communities, those would probably be negatively affected by the effects of COVID, the lockdowns, the immobility of people. But if you look at the highly digitalized businesses, so the likes of Amazon, the likes of Facebook Marketplace, these trading platforms continued and actually increased their sales. Just coincidentally, in terms of e-commerce growth, in 2023 alone, the continent is projected to generate a further $30 billion in these types of transactions. So I think COVID introduced this idea that we need to now look and focus on this growing digitalization that's taking place. So that's the one side of the scope. The second element that we saw post-COVID, and I'm linking this to what Samira has said about the growth of the country programs. Coming out of just before the pandemics and the lockdowns set in, a number of measures were put in place for countries, taxpayers, to provide some relief. Now, we had to be very cautious in how these measures of relief get taken and how they get extended. One of the concerns that we had was if a country provides, say, a tax relief for a multinational to file their taxes at a later stage or forgo certain payments, would this not be creating sort of a de facto tax holiday that a company might actually be operating? So, for example, if we take the example of South Africa, some of the mining companies were still allowed to have some minimal operations. Now, if you've got, for example, a tax relief measure, how does that then get monitored to the point where the tax relief and the balance of the situation are equal, so that you don't create an unintended tax holiday in the short term? So from a technical assistance and member engagement point of view, those are some of the critical issues. And then, of course, coming out of the pandemic, the growth of interaction among multilateral institutions, regional organizations, and taxpayers alike on the global tax debate on the two-pillar solution from the OECD, on Article 12B from the United Nations, all looking at how do we tax digitalized economy, but also, is there not a discrimination if you just target a certain type of business when there are other multinationals making super profits? So the debate has raged on, and certain design elements have come through. And I think ATAF has been really, really on the ball in terms of looking at what is ideal for members, but also what is ideal for developing countries in general coming out of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Thulani. And yes, what you're mentioning is actually one of from going through the ATAF annual reports, it's been one of the focus area in terms of assisting countries throughout that entire BEPS process, which, as you know, in 2022 picked up its pace, culminating into the adoption of the two-pillar solution that you mentioned earlier. And I want to hear more from you about how ATAF has assisted its members throughout this process leading to the adoption of the two-pillar solution, but also what sort of support is being planned going forward. But before I let you answer that, let me go back to Samira. You indicated some really impressive figures in terms of how ATAF has exceeded its targets in 2022. I think if one were to speculate, one would have anticipated that maybe ATAF would have been negatively slightly affected by the COVID effects, but on the contrary, it seems like it bounced back quite nicely. Can you give us maybe a couple of ideas of the type of programs or maybe internally the type of reforms that you have implemented which have mostly contributed to these results?
Thank you so much, Romeo, for that question. And yes, the technical assistance work has been really very impactful. And in 2022, if I just speak about the demand for technical assistance from ATAF, in 2020 alone, we had 11 ATAF member countries that requested technical assistance. In 2021, we saw an increase by over 50%. To 18 countries. And then in 2022, the TA outreach increased to 27 countries. And some of these countries, if I can just mention them, like Benin, Burkina Faso, Madagascar, Togo, Morocco, and Senegal. Whilst we also had Lusophone countries who approached us, which were Angola and Mozambique. Now, the technical assistance, the impact that it has had, in 18 countries, we were able to establish transfer pricing units and introducing legislation and introducing and amending legislation in around 5 countries. In terms of exchange of information, we have provided support to about 9 countries and assisted in establishing exchange of information units in 5 of those countries. In terms of VAT technical assistance programs, which were established in 2021, firstly in 3 countries, by being Angola, Ghana, and Eswatini. Since then, 28 VAT technical assistance missions have been delivered. And to date, we have been also assisting substantially in taxation of the digital economy and VAT on cross-border supplies, which has also resulted in the provision of supporting the development of subsidiary legal frameworks for VAT compliance in the digital economy. Additionally, ATAF has assisted in developing the auditing skills of many countries in specific sectors. Just to name one, Eswatini, where we have been supporting them in terms of the insurance sector audit, and the result of that has been that the skills of the tax officials there has grown substantially. That 3 audit assessments have been raised on insurance companies, resulting in also revenue being collected. Another area that is having a great impact is the technical assistance in data analytics, which is driving decision-making in revenue administrations, as well as improving their risk management processes and their revenue strategies. In 2022, we also focused a lot on soft skills. We have been providing support in terms of developing the leadership skills of our revenue administrations, and also a lot in the area of auditing specific sectors, because, in terms of most countries struggle with auditing the big companies like telecoms, financial sector, construction sector, and there's been a growing need of support in the area of gaming and betting, as well as in the extractive sector. So we have been focusing and having a great impact in enhancing the skills of auditors in these specific sectors. And so I'll stop there for now and I'll hand back to you, but this is just in a nutshell. It doesn't, the TA is not limited to these areas. We have, done a lot of work in various other areas. For example, also in establishing a call center, providing the framework. And this is one of the key focus areas of, if you look at the TADAT, in terms of having a centralized call center. So this was something that was also pioneered, and we provided support in establishing the framework for a centralized call center for Madagascar, including, showing them, including having the framework for the IT specifications and the costings for this particular centralized call center. So I'll stop there and hand back to you, Romeo, for any questions.
Thank you, Samira. It's, again, very impressive. You mentioned 50% increase in demand for technical assistance. I think this is something that has probably caused you as the person responsible for technical assistance within the Secretariat to come up with innovative ways, of addressing this demand, because a 50% increase with the same resources and the same strategy surely wouldn't have led to the positive results that you're mentioning now. So there must, I'm really keen to hear about some of the strategies or the changes that you've made internally as a Secretariat in order to be able to cope with a 50% increase in your demand. And similarly to the situation that ATAF find itself with international tax, the process really picking up speed towards the end of 2022. I'm sure that as the international tax department within the Secretariat, there's been some adjustments in the type of assistance that is provided to members, which was quite fast-paced from my understanding. So can you share with us maybe some of those strategies, some of those changes that were made internally in order to cope with the change in the pace of the demand that you were receiving from the members in your respective areas? Maybe let's hear from Thulani and then we'll come back to you, Samira.
Certainly, I think one of the major areas in terms of changing strategy was the introduction of the Rapid Response Unit that Samira heads. And the Rapid Response Unit also looked at a number of issues, particularly around audit. So coming out of the pandemic and also looking at the amount of requests received from member countries and the need to generate revenue, and because of the gaps that were left by the pandemic, the Rapid Response Unit is a major strategic key point that the Secretariat has implemented. But also, when we look at the other strategy that we carried from COVID, in the country programs, is that we while there's a demand for in-person training, as Samira referred to, we also have increased the amount of interactions on complex audit cases via virtual means. Mm-hmm. And that's what that's done, is that it's allowed us to look at issues at a very quick and rapid manner, give advice, come back out of the process and report and discuss within the Secretariat, and then go back and see whether the country or the member country is moving in the right direction, and whether the engagement with the taxpayer is on track. So the strategy in receiving a large number of requests and dealing with them has really been predicated by the establishment internally of the country programs unit under what we call the member services department. So there's more of an open outreach component to our work that is really looking at the needs of the members on a more regular basis. And I don't want to take the too much from Samira's plate, because there's other internal tracking strategies that she's implemented that allow us on the international tax side to see where do we need to increase the technical intervention within a country, where do we need to increase the policy advice, where do we need to generate more data, etc., for policy guidance. But I'll allow her to expand more on that. Thanks.
Yes, please. You can go ahead, Samira.
Thank you, Thulani, for that intervention. And as my colleague has rightly indicated, one of the strategies to deal with the increased demand was the establishment of the Rapid Response Unit, which aimed at, benefiting from the low-hanging fruits, let me put it that way, being able to address, members' needs in real time, and addressing quick fixes in terms of technical assistance. So I won't expand a lot more on that, but just to say that in 2022, about 26 technical assistance missions were conducted under the Rapid Response Unit. Now, another area that has assisted us in terms of our delivery and our performance is the experts database. The experts database was developed to increase, our pool of expertise. As you know, ATAF is very much focused on peer-to-peer learning and building continental expertise. And so the experts database is a repository of experts from Africa and beyond, but also for us to be able to quickly, identify the right experts for the technical assistance requests that we receive, and address, this area for the tax administration efficiently and effectively by using experts that we can identify from this experts database, but also to increase the number of French and Portuguese experts that we have access to, so that we can deliver programs to our member countries in their language of preference, and also, to find sort of solutions that are coming from Africa for our member countries through the sharing of expertise. So that is one of the areas that we were able to use in terms of increasing the delivery of our technical assistance. And then also, we have increased the diversity of our technical assistance programs. So we have now expanded into various areas of, including customs, customs risk analysis, and customs technical assistance. So this is some of the things that we have done. But I think my colleague also alluded to the implementation of the TA management tool, and this tool helps us to oversee the type of technical assistance work we are doing, which are the areas we are focusing on, and then it also helps guide us in terms of where we should allocate our resources better, how to, where we are focusing our efforts, where we have seen an increase, and that allows us to plan better as well in terms of our technical assistance delivery. And lastly, another area that has contributed is the implementation of regionalization, and sort of bringing the technical assistance closer to the members, trying to identify the eccentricities of a particular region, and addressing those particular needs accordingly. So I think those kind of new implementation processes that we have come up with in the new decade has contributed to the increase in technical assistance, as well as being able to actually meet the demand in terms of the delivery of technical assistance. I'll stop here and hand over to you.
Thank you, Samira. You mentioned regionalization. This is something very interesting. Maybe for the sake of our audience, if you can just in a couple of words, explain what this is exactly for ATAF.
So regionalization is basically bringing customized technical assistance and training programs to address the regional dynamics. It's bringing the technical assistance closer to the region. I think that basically summarizes it in terms of what its key focus area is. Because we have 4 regions, West, North, East, and South, and each region has their own dynamics. Regionalization was conceptualized so that we can address the needs of that particular region and also do it closer to them, and so that they have access to us easier as well. So I think that in summary explains regionalization. I hope I have explained it well to you.
Yes, absolutely. I think at 42 members now, this is probably a process that is much needed in terms of ATAF's expansion into the continent. Thank you very much for that. And let's come back to the international tax. Thulani, you mentioned earlier the 2-pillar solution. Now, I believe the OECD released a much anticipated technical guidance in order to assist governments with the implementation of the GLOBE rules. How is ATAF going to fit into this process? Because my understanding is that the deadlines are quite tight. How are you going to ensure that your members are keeping up with the process going forward, especially in terms of implementation of the rules?
Yeah, I think you're highlighting a very important element around the time, the deadlines, and also the implementation of policy. One very principal point we as a secretariat have advanced in our dealings with the OECD is that the pace of the global standard setting process is far too rapid for some of our member countries who want to interact with the issues, but don't have the capacity internally, don't have large revenue administrations that allow personnel to stay solely focused on this. And so one strategy we've developed is to bring about technical notes that explain the nuances and the issues in the global standard setting process. Now, you mentioned the GLOBE rules, the global anti-base erosion rules, and that's part of the Pillar 2 package, which is looking at really bringing about an equilibrium in terms of multinationals paying a global minimum tax. And the idea here is to remove anti-competitive behavior and sort of neutralize the need for competition, either through tax incentive, corporate income tax incentives, that in the past we've seen they induce a race to the bottom. So in terms of bringing our members on board with the GLOBE rules, our take is this: there are 27 African countries who are members of the OECD inclusive framework. And then the other half of the continent is not party to the inclusive framework. However, the 27 African countries that are in the inclusive framework will have the same opportunity to implement a minimum global tax rate as the non-members. So it's a global element that will affect all countries. Now, we've gone a step further as a secretariat, and we've looked at the areas where there are revenue leakages within the scope of the rules. One of them is, of course, tax incentives. Considering we have high corporate income tax rates on the continent, we're looking at an average of about 25 to 35% of corporate income tax rate. And then we have effective tax rates that bring that corporate income tax rate fairly low. And so we've looked at how do we ensure that our members are protected, that they benefit from the GLOBE rules, but most importantly, that the money that's on the table in the global financial and economic system, Africa gets an opportunity to take it first off the table. And I think this is a very important principle in the stated debate and discussion on taxing rights. While it's not a full achievement of the allocation of taxing rights to source countries, i.e. African countries, it is a particular important move that income from tax incentives will not be paid in the home jurisdiction of a multinational that's operating in an African country, but rather African countries will have the opportunity to tax that income first and top it up to a rate of 15%. So two things here are quite important. One is that you're not losing money on your tax incentives, and on that, the taxpayer is not affected, because the new rules would have had the taxpayer pay that deficit up to a rate of 15% in their home jurisdiction. So you're not breaking the investment hub element, or the need for investment in developing countries. And then the second part of that is, of course, because most of the incentives we see in our member countries are corporate income tax incentives, you now have an opportunity to top that up to a rate of 15%. So there is revenue potential here for countries.
Yes.
The benefits of all of this is that you now have a way of dealing with wasteful tax incentives or uncompetitive behavior. And so again, you remove the race to the bottom, the competitive nature of country A giving a lower incentive than country B in order to attract investment. Of course, there are other elements to the global rules, but what we're trying to do as a secretariat is bring our members through a series of discussions and awareness campaigns that look at the structure of the global rules and the benefits of the global rules and the technicalities of the global rules. And also, we have to be frank that there are areas of these rules that are very complex and may not be beneficial to African countries. And so we're having a series of engagements with our member countries to go through all of these elements. Lastly, I think it's important to stress that there are other ways in which countries can protect their revenues. At ATAF, we've looked at the least contentious, least politically sensitive way through the development of a domestic minimum top-up tax suggested approach to help countries bring in this type of legislation, so that we, one, protect investment hubs, two, we don't agitate the tax policy environment and that space between trade and industry and treasuries or economic planning, but we sort of keep the stability. Three, we align the domestic minimum top-up tax to other processes that multinationals will have to undertake in their home countries anyway. So the result of that is that everyone should remain relatively balanced. I'm cautious to say relatively happy, because there are some countries that may lose out, but to remain cautiously balanced on this. So throughout 2023, we'll be engaging in several activities with our stakeholders, principally the African Union Commission, but and others like the South African government who've expressed that they will be introducing these global rules as early as next year.
This is quite and indeed a lot of work ahead, and as you said, it's going to take work in different fronts, including the work that Samira does in terms of capacitating the countries to become compliant when comes the time to implement those rules. And another interesting platform where ATAF also intervenes is at the United Nations level with the resolution on the Convention for International Tax Cooperation. And can you share also with us some of the processes that you've developed in that sense and on the ongoing engagements on that topic? And what do you expect as ATAF from that resolution as potential takeaways for African countries and ATAF members particularly?
Yes, so I think the developments that have taken place at the UN, spurred on by the Africa Group led by the Federal Republic of Nigeria, have been very critical, and this is a game shifter. It's brought the international tax world. It's awoken a sleeping moment, a sleeping giant, perhaps, and equally, it's also in the narrative of reforming the global financial architecture. The UN resolution is a way of re-looking at standard setting and global processes and asking the question, should standard setting not take place in a platform or a forum that has all countries represented? And that, of course, is the United Nations. The current process that has this taking place at the OECD has its limitations. You referred earlier to the pace, and we also noted that the pace of the negotiations leaves very little time for countries to actually meaningfully interact, and that's where ATAF has been a key to assisting countries. But the UN tax resolution asks the question, should we not have a space where all countries get to have a representation because they are already members of the United Nations? And so as an organization, we've submitted our comments to the Secretary General's request that we provide some feedback and some guidance on the mechanisms under which this resolution should take place. Principally, this is what we think as a secretariat, that the UN resolution on international tax cooperation should take what's the good things that have benefited developing countries as a baseline for its future development. So, for example, where we're seeing issues around the simplification measures, say, for example, around Amount B, if the good things that benefit developing countries are brought into that convention, that's a good start. The second thing is it has to remove duplication, because we don't have the time, the resources to go back and re-debate all the issues over again. So we have to remove the elements of duplication so that countries benefit. And then the third thing is that we have to look at ways in which the resolution removes the small group of countries that tend to have global influence in terms of standard setting, and that it brings everyone to the table to negotiate on an equal footing. Now, the process for this, we anticipate will take more time. And again, in 2023, these are elements that we want to engage with members to interact with our stakeholders through the regionalization program that Samira referred to, but also ensuring that we understand the potential of the convention and how it fits into the already ongoing UN processes where ATAF has a footprint, including the UN Committee of Experts on International Tax Cooperation and its various subcommittees. So we are excited about the developments, and we're looking forward to contributing to the strengthening and the evolution of the resolution.
Thank you very much. So Samira, with all these developments happening at the international level, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, because I anticipate the amount of work and technical assistance that you're going to have to mobilize for ATAF members. We were talking about 50% increase in demand. You're potentially looking at 70 to 80% increase from that 50% increase. So that's a lot of work coming your way. Are you ready? Do you feel that ATAF is now equipped to respond to this demand? And just for the sake of those listening to us, what is the process for your membership to access that assistance that you're providing at the moment?
Okay, thank you very much, Romeo. And yes, you are absolutely 100% correct. We expect an increased demand in technical assistance, definitely from it growing from 50%. I'm not sure to what percentage, but we'll see at the end of 2023. But just in terms of ATAF's current value proposition, where we are looking at including developing the tax policy capacity, introducing the regional approach, as I mentioned, as well as building the customs and trade capacities. We are looking at addressing this area, especially what my colleague Tulani has been talking about in terms of what's happening on the international front in terms of the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 discussions, etc. ATAF has adopted a supply-driven approach as well in terms of technical assistance. So, and some of the focus areas will be the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 solutions, providing support to our member countries in those areas, as well as the implementation of the DMTT, the domestic minimum top-up tax, as well as, you know, the big area of concern for many revenue administrations, taxation of the digital economy, and then the huge realization by the revenue administrations of the importance of data analysis and data analytics, artificial intelligence in the way they actually administer taxes going forward. So we are preparing ourselves in terms of, you know, providing the support to the member countries, and we are looking forward to increasing our outreach through the regionalization, through the rapid response, through you know, onboarding a lot of more experts, as well as, you know, utilizing the experts database. And I encourage, you know, our African experts on the continent to please go and check out our website, if they feel that they have the skills that, you know, could contribute to ATAF technical programs, to please go and register and, you know, be part of building the African continent in terms of increasing domestic resource mobilization. And also, we are looking at, you know, in terms of, again, the supply-driven technical assistance, the use of country profiles and the use of research-based TA to identify areas of technical support and reach out to our member countries and provide that support. You know, also looking at diagnostic assessments like the TADAT, etc., to identify areas of support for our member countries. Then also in terms of addressing the need, and as you say, you know, how do we cope? Increasing our collaboration with capacity development partners and regional and international organizations so that we reach more of our members and we are able to support them, as well as minimize, you know, duplication of effort in terms of the types of technical assistance that is provided to member countries, so that we work together and we actually, with different, you know, development partners. We have been working quite a bit with, you know, the OECD, the IMF, the World Bank Group, and even regional organizations like CREDAF, WATAF, and TEDI as well. So, and this allows us to, you know, address our members' needs better. Because it sort of minimizes the duplication, but we are also having an impact in terms of reaching more countries that way. Some of the things that we plan to also, you know, offer our members is through our technical assistance, you know, developing audit guides for specific sectors, and you know, based this resulting out of technical assistance programs that we have with them, and we think that these types of audit guides will be beneficial for all of the membership, and not just for a specific country in the long term. So this is how we foresee addressing the needs and reaching, you know, most of our membership by 2025 in terms of support in the different areas of tax administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you. And we'll be talking to you probably at the end of this year to see how that has worked out. But in the meantime, you or the continent actually is confronted with a dilemma as ATAF is working relentlessly to achieve the significant results that you've just presented to us in terms of increasing your members' revenue collection and even working at the international level to try and bring in even more revenues for African countries. Another plague, if I can call it that, is afflicting the country, that is illicit financial flows leaving the continent. Now, recently, a report by UNCTAD has presented very alarming figures, and it actually showed that there's been an increase in the level of IFFs leaving the continent compared to the first report that was published by the high-level tax panels, the famous Mbeki panel in 2015. What are the measures that you are now that you're developing as an organization to try and address this issue? What is the role that ATAF is playing? Because you're bringing in revenues, but at the same time, revenues leaving the continent. How are you combating these IFFs from the continent?
Yeah, maybe let me jump in because this is a very interesting conundrum that you've pointed out. And yes, you know, shockingly, we've seen an increase in illicit financial flows. And you know, earlier on, Samira highlighted the number of technical interventions that we've made, the 18 TP units that we've set up, the 5 EOI units that we've set up, and those are actually a direct response to the Mbeki report. That is ATAF's direct response to the Mbeki report. So the Mbeki report on transfer pricing that established EOI and transfer pricing units, and ATAF has actively worked on that, and we've achieved great results. The challenge is the volumes of transactions. Remember, there was that growth in Africa, that economic growth, the year-on-year 3% growth in terms of economic development and GDP, and that, of course, has seen an increase in cross-border transactions, and also an opportunity to attack areas where perhaps legislations and regulations are not up to date, and so that's one way of looking at the increases. Also, where there's new legislation, new regulations, there's also new ways of trying to see where you can treaty shop to get better benefits to move your money around. Also, just to qualify, the 89 billion also has large amounts of it as criminal activities. And to answer your question around what has ATAF or what is ATAF doing is we've refocused our work on illicit financial flows to really look at the tax-related IFFs and the trade and customs related IFFs. And we've done this through a 6-pillar approach that looks at cross-border transactions, transparency in the form of exchange of information, customs and trade data, doing dots analysis using IMF data to see where the gaps are, interagency cooperation, and of course, advocacy, getting the right stakeholders in the room to really unpack the issues. I think in the past, where we succeeded is to look at the direct implications of the high-level panel report. What the step that we may have missed is the advocacy part, is to bring the various stakeholders to say, this is what's happening in your country, this is what the global movement is, this is what regionalization or regional policies are decrying, and where are you? And getting that civil society element involved in asking those questions around government interventions in preventing illicit financial flows. Additionally, as part of our rollout strategy is we've partnered with the African Union Commission, and we've aligned our strategies so that what the principal policy-making body on the continent is doing around illicit financial flows feeds into the ATAF work, and we feed into the African Union work. Lastly, on that, we've also established what's called the Specialized Technical Committee, Subcommittee on Tax and IFFs. This is an instituted body of the African Union that has tax experts, economists, civil society academics that are going to look at the progress in implementing illicit financial flows prevention measures across member countries. And already the African Union is getting a several number of requests from countries where ATAF is assisting. Last point on this is internally, we've brought our 3 major technical committees. That's exchange of information, value-added taxes, and cross-border transactions to form what's called a joint technical committee that specifically looks at how do we prevent the VAT issues that rear their head up in IFFs, that includes missing trader fraud or carousel fraud. How do we improve transparency in the sense that, how do we target high net worth individuals? Because we know that, you can put your money in a bag and fly to Dubai and not declare that in your private jet, etc. And then how do we also look at the abusive practices like aggressive transfer pricing? So the Joint Technical Committee is also looking at this and bringing about practical solutions and products that countries can implement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we'll have the opportunity to have some of the representatives of the ATAF's technical committees in these various areas to unpack further some of the works that they do, namely in domestic tax, in EOI, and further into cross-border taxation. Unfortunately,
Romeo,
sorry, Samira, you have something to add?
I just wanted to add something. I think you asked me a question earlier on how can member countries reach out to us for technical assistance? And also, I just wanted to add a little bit more to what Tulani has spoken about in terms of the work on mitigating IFFs. So firstly, in terms of the request for technical assistance, we have you can access us through the website and make a request online, which would come to the Secretariat, and we would then engage with the country, or it can be done through an official request through our Executive Secretary's office, and we will then engage with you as in terms of your technical assistance request. Then in terms of illicit financial flows, I think, the work that Tulani and the international tax team, as well as the domestic tax team, are doing at a high level contributes to the overall, thinking in terms of IFFs and how to mitigate it. But at the technical and operational level as well, this feeds into the technical assistance work that we do, as well as vice versa. Why do I say that? Because our revenue administration officials need to be equipped with the skills to detect tax fraud, tax evasion, and missing trader or carousel fraud, under declaration, and so forth. And so at a country programs level, at technical assistance level, we aim to improve the skills of our auditors and our investigators, as well as our risk analysis processes in terms of identifying the tax evasion and tax fraud. And also we have also partnered with, the TIWB in terms of delivery of programs in criminal investigation or tax crime, and having also our own tax investigation programs where we are upskilling auditors, as I said, and investigators to, fight illicit financial flows and mitigate against tax crime and corruption. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you to you. It looks like you are waging a battle in all fronts, internationally, domestically, and making sure that your members have the capacity needed in order to fight those challenges. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the time that was allocated to us. Thank you, Tulani Shongwe, who's a Manager International Tax at ATAF. And thank you, Samira Khan, who is Manager Country Programs and Rapid Response. All the information that they've provided throughout this program, the ATAF website, www.ataftax.org, all that information will be provided in the commentary section of this video. So you can catch it if you've caught us maybe at the end. You can still catch the repeat on ATAF's social media platforms. We are available. We are present on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So simply search for the African Tax Administration Forum or ATAF Tax, and you should be able to find us. Thank you very much, colleagues. Next week, we'll be addressing another aspects of ATAF's performance in the year 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Au revoir.